I just feel honored. Finally, I get I get the one-on-one with the great Curtis Funk.
Whatever,
I
dude.
was thinking maybe you can help me out, but I was thinking, how long do we go back? It's
That's a,
probably from the
I
beginning.
remember where, but I don't know when it was.
Are you
I think the
thinking
first time we
New
met was at the
Orleans?
Delta Center. No, before that.
That's true. No, New Orleans is where we hung out, and your wife came out. And we kind of did
Yep.
the bus ride or some sort of public
Yeah,
transportation
St.
ride, and
Charles or whatever that thing is, and
we
then
got the
like we did like
beignets. But no,
crawfish
I think it was. I
boil,
think actually you're right. I think it was the Delta Center at. Was it
UFDA.
UFDA?
Yeah,
That's right. That's a long time ago.
yeah. That's when I remember meeting you for the first time because like that was cool because they had the meetings that year down at the bottom, like in the basically
Yep.
at like the court level, so we could walk
It
out onto
was
the court and shoot
courtside.
around. That was way
Back
cool.
then, I think it was the Vivid Center, wasn't it?
Yeah, but
I'm so happy
those
it's the Delta Center again. Yeah, it's
yeah,
always been the
I
Delta
never
Center.
could.
I'm
Same.
with
I could never start calling it. I mean, it's no disrespect to Vivint. It was just like it's the Delta Center, so we all
you. Yeah.
know it
So
as.
I was happy to see it come back for sure. Especially as Utah people, it's kind of that's it. Utah Jazz, Delta Center, the depressing mid '90s, losing all the championship games in Game 5 to the Bulls. I mean, we're in it. It's a group, so it's what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, we all wish Jordan just would have stuck it out with baseball for 2 more years.
Every year I thought it was the year, and it just was. I don't know. Oh well, but
We're rebuilding, man. We got this.
always rebuild.
Yeah, that's awesome. Oh man, what was I going to ask you about right out of the gate? Well, no, you nailed that. I was definitely thinking like, when was the first time we met? And I don't know when that was. You were still at Krakoa. You were there with Jason Whiting.
Yep.
What were you guys? I mean, I don't feel like I'd seen Krakoa at UFDA. So maybe that was like a new thing.
Yes and no. So going back then, because I was there, I just would have transitioned from managing a territory. I had several states that I went under my belt, working with funeral homes, working with agents. And when Percoa made the turn to really do a lot of more emphasis on business development, I came in to help, just because I had a lot of passion with working with owners. I had a lot of success building my own personal territory, and so now that I was in that role, I never really went outside of my area. But Utah was a focus, and I remember because of that, it's like, hey, let's start doing these state conventions. So that was really when I started learning about what these state conventions and these national conventions were all about, and it was just pretty impressive.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah. Okay, a couple random questions before we get into your life story here.
yeah,
Best fast food burger.
okay, hands down for me, because I've lived all over. Checkers.
Checker. Okay.
It's more of an East Coast. Definitely not here. Now there was a hamburger place here in Utah, in Logan, that basically was a Checkers, but it was called Central Park. Do you remember a burger place called Central Park?
I do. Yeah. Was it the drive-through only?
Yes, drive-through only. And
Yeah, I remember that.
it's basically. And when I left Utah, I was devastated. But then when I found Checkers, it was the identical. So Checkers, and that's also it's coupled with hands down my favorite fries too.
Fries.
So,
I was just gonna say that. Their seasoned fries at Central Park were incredible. Well, there you go. Okay, so like, what about a fast food you're maybe embarrassed to admit that you like to eat at?
we talk about this all the time in either icebreakers or whatever it might be when we're meeting new people. Is we do an overrated, underrated for fast food, and I always say, and this sometimes it causes fights, sometimes people are on board, but I still do not get the In and Out vibe. I have one 2 miles down my road, and it's always 30, 40, 50 cars deep. It doesn't matter what time of day I'm driving by it, and I'm just like, why? But where do I go eat on Sunday? We went to In and Out. But yeah, it's good, but I just the hype that's all around it and how packed it always is, it always shocks me. But oh well.
Yeah, no, I get it. I didn't like it the first few times, and then I got trapped in the Grand Canyon and evacuated from a flash flood. And like the first place we could eat was like Kingman, Arizona, like a million miles away.
Oh
And
yeah.
they had an In and Out. And when it's like, I don't know, when it like saves your life, that converted me.
No, I know what you mean, because there's just these random times where I'm like, it just sounds really good. I don't know if it's just like a hamburger I'm craving or whatever, but it's just, I can do it. And then you finish it and you're like, I could have done without it, but it was still good. So anyway,
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah.
So there's your food
So
stuff
tell
for
us
you.
about this. That's perfect. I'm going to have to find a Checkers, but so tell me about this Puerto Vallarta excitement.
Yeah, excitement, good word. Um, you know, when I first saw the headline hit my phone, it was from a buddy saying, "Oh my gosh, what is happening in Puerto Vallarta? Have you heard about this?" My instant reaction was, I just push it aside. I was like, I don't even want to. This has to be not real. It's fake, because I mean, we're supposed to be there next week. So this was a week ago. I'm like, no, this can't be real, because what it is that we look forward to do every year is just reward, all the people that make NGL who NGL is today, and that's from our partners to the funeral homes to the agents that just work hard. I mean, we had a record year last year, and so we were really gearing up to have a great celebration, and then just this hits, and you're just torn, because you're like, what do we do? And I don't want to say fortunately, but you know we were in good company, because other carriers were going to the exact same spot that we were a week earlier. They made the right call. Ultimately, when it comes down to it, as much as you want to celebrate and hope things always work out, we just had to make the call. We didn't cancel it, and we didn't, already replace it. But this last week, I've been very with the travel company that we use, which they do an amazing job, is trying to figure out where are we going to go, because we are committed to celebrate our agents, and our partners and all the guests that are coming. So we're committed to find a new destination where we could celebrate them, and hopefully we'll have that soon, so we can start ramping up and getting prepared for it. But I mean, these are tough, because there's a lot. There's more behind the scenes, and everybody that listens to this, that does these trips, they get it. But it's not just showing up and hanging out at the pool or the beach or doing those things. I mean, there's award ceremonies, there's excursions, there's you know travel back and forth from the hotels to the whatever. There's so much behind the scenes. It's just like, we got to start all over. But it's okay, because again, what we did not want to do is, because I think right now the vibe at Vallarta is back to normal. It really depends on what media outlet or even people that you're talking with. I mean, people that are there are just like, no, this is plain as day. This is what we do. But again, it's sitting back and making sure you make the right decision. And we could have stuck with it, because I think where it's at today. But what we didn't want to do is have to make that decision for themselves, that really were looking forward to this. We could have gone, but I pretty much guarantee we had a handful that just would have been uncomfortable, and we don't want to put that on them. And so we wanted to make sure that we provide, another opportunity where we can, continue the celebration. So more to come on that, and we're optimistic that that will be figured out soon. But what
That's
a
so
damper!
crazy.
It's a damper going into the week, I'll tell you. So I mean, for our group size, we're in the 300 people area, so it's not huge, but it's not small. It's meaningful, and you know, but everybody's been great. The understanding from everybody that we had the go getters, like I'm all in no matter what, and I love that, because that's a lot of my personality. Uh, but I have to say, when we made the decision not to go during our scheduled time, the gratitude has been fantastic. So that just it just makes you realize we do work with, some really good, caring people.
Yeah, man. Yeah, that's a lot of people though. 300, man. That's a lot. That's a lot of logistics. So good luck on that, figuring that out. And man,
Yeah, and
crazy.
like I said, we're
Um,
we're, we're excited to announce where it is, because one of the things that we do on our trips is we announce where we're going for the next year. We do that at our awards ceremony, and so now people are like, "Do we get to know?" So we're going to try to put something together where we're not going to hold that up, because the motivation needs to be there, because we love people to get excited. So that announcement will be coming out sooner than having to wait, for the trip. So.
yeah. Well, awesome. Okay, man, let's get into your story. So right from the beginning, like where you're born, where you're from, family, siblings, all that, man.
Man, you want to go deep.
Yeah, deep.
you know, uh, Growing up, whenever people ask me this question, they always follow it up with, "Were you a military type child?" Because it sounds like it. And I'm like, "No, I'm not." Uh, but I was born in Utah. If people are familiar with Utah, I was born in a small county called San Pete County. We were living in Ephraim, Utah. My dad was
Whoa.
an athletic trainer and housing director and assistant football coach at Snow College. But I was born in Mount Pleasant, Utah, because that was the closest hospital. Where living in Ephraim, in the early '80s. So that's where I was born. But lived in Ephraim for about 7 years. Loved it. I mean, it was fun. Small town, turkey farms. I mean, the joke was you wake up and you have turkey feathers, on your front yard. You have speed limit sign back then, and then you had the 4-wheeler speed limit sign. I remember the first stoplight came in, and the first Walmart, or no, not the Walmart. It was the first McDonald's. So yeah, very very small. But then my dad's career took him to New Mexico, and so in 1989 we packed up the family. I'm one of four. I'm the third child. I have an older sister, an older brother. Then it's myself, and I have a younger sister. And then my dad went from Snow College to Western New Mexico in Silver City, New Mexico, and we were there for about 3 years. Very, very good cultural experience. I mean, we were South New Mexico. It's funny because I remember as about a 7-year-old, 6 or 7-year-old, telling my friends, because we were moving to New Mexico, I said, "When you see me next, you won't be able to understand me, because I'm just going to be speaking Spanish." That never happened. That was like the mind of a child. Like that's just what I had to do. But no, we were there a short stint, 3 years. I learned very very quickly what javelinas were, and wild pigs, and just. But it was fun, and then from there, again, we moved to Grand Junction, Colorado, and that's where elementary, middle school was happening. My dad went to Mesa State. He was now just fully into the housing department side of things, and then I eventually went back to Utah, Logan, Utah. Then went to Utah State, and that's where I finished up high school. I actually was the first kid in our family to actually start high school and finish high school at the same high school. But leading up to that, I
Wow.
had like 7 different schools that I had to go to with all the traveling. But it was nice. Our family's very close. We're very tight knit, and I have to give credit, because we had to just rely on everybody, like on ourselves, because of our moving, and I love that. I love the experience that put us out there, and I think that's where I really came into just the sales side of things, because you had to make new friends. You couldn't just stand back. You had to, you're always the new kid so many times, and it's just making your spot. So love that. So Logan, Utah, I was there until I graduated high school. But my senior year in high school, I actually stayed back and graduated, because my parents and my younger sister moved to Georgia. He went and spent his last 19 years at Georgia Tech. And but I was like, I'm in my senior year. It's Halloween time, so I'm already a couple months into it. My older sister was married, so I stayed with her. You know, you could think, myself, no parents around, older sister, I could have gotten into a lot of trouble, which I probably did. But I graduated, and then but after I graduated, literally like 6 days after graduation, I flew to Georgia, and um, reconnect with my parents. So, uh, and then from there, it's just Georgia, then working my way slowly back west again, where I'm in St. George, Utah. I say St. George because that's what people know, but I'm actually in Washington, Utah. But and we love it. We've been here almost 9 years, and it's actually the first time I remember flying in when we first moved here. And again, just my career in this profession, moving, I started in Georgia, moved to Colorado. This is all within the Preneed side. And then from Colorado, moving here on the road, I remember flying in one time into the St. George airport and I was feeling like, wow, I actually feel like I'm flying. It was the first time like I felt like I was coming home, which was a good feeling with all the moving parts leading up to it. So when we're super happy to be here.
No, that's awesome. Um, Crazy. So what were your hobbies growing up as a kid?
It. I could probably sum it up with just saying the word sports. We were a very athletic, sports-driven family. I was involved in everything from basketball to wrestling to football to baseball. A lot of that I credit to my dad, who was an avid sports lover as well. And then my brother, amazing basketball player. He did it all, but basketball was his forte. And we lived in areas that provided us outdoor experiences. So we got into huge mountain biking and river rafting and just um, backpacking, camping. And so we just did it all. But I would say growing up, probably our biggest love was snow skiing. I started skiing when I was 2 years old, um, and at Beaver Mountain, up in Logan. But I remember I have photos of myself between my grandpa's legs, him holding me. But when we moved to Colorado, my dad, because he loved skiing as well, and he wanted to provide that opportunity for us, so he was on the ski patrol for a good 10 years. And so ski patrol comes good perks. You get the season pass. And so it seemed like in school growing up, every Saturday, every weekend in the winter, we were on the ski slopes, as a family. Best memories growing up doing those things. We had the perks of opening the resort because of my dad, closing the resort, because of ski patrol, which is they call sweep the mountain. And we would do it. We would, ski. We'd all divide out on runs, and we would ski down and yell closing, and just make sure everybody get off the mountain safe. And so, just really just fun activities like that we were just always involved in, which I would say, which really just made me into what I love today, which is just being outside, being active, trying new things, and so I contribute that a lot to my youth growing up.
That's awesome. And when did golf enter the life?
Golf was always there. I think, you know, my dad. I feel like I'm talking about my dad on this, which is great because there's a good legacy there. But I remember as a kid, I had two older siblings, obviously, and my dad was a big avid golfer. His dad, my grandpa Black, um, that was his life. I mean, he was a club pro, considered a PGA, player. Designed a lot of the courses in the Pocatello, Idaho area. I mean, that every day my grandpa was on the golf course, and so that's what my dad grew up with. And so my dad just fell in love with the game. I think a lot of the genetics, fell down because I love it and I picked it up pretty quick. But I remember my dad early on, he would say he's taking me to play golf, but then I'd wake up and he's gone. But he has my brother. But it was always there. So whenever we got with my dad's side of the family, family reunions or whatever it is, we always played golf. But even on my mom's side, my grandpa bought a cabin in Wyoming, is on the 18th tee box, and so every summer I was on the golf course playing, and that's really where the love came. And so when I moved back to Logan from Colorado my freshman year in high school, golf is really what I stuck with. People say, "Did you?" I'm not a small guy, but when people see me and they say, "Oh, you must have played football in high school," which I take that as a compliment, they're always stunned. I say, "No, I was a golfer," and they go, "Oh, there's a wasted size," but I love it because golf has done so much for me. Just being able to get out there socially, getting out there, even in this industry, you know it. A lot of our fun times together has been on the golf course. But it teaches you a lot of good fundamentals. It teaches you just a lot about yourself. And so, yeah, all through high schools on the golf team, lettered every year. And I wish I would have stuck with it. But after, when you're a senior and you graduate, you think you have the whole world behind you because you feel like you finish. And I tell people, I never thought, I regret that these words ever came out of my mouth. But I said after high school, I said, I'm kind of sick of golf. And looking back now, I'm like, you're an idiot. Why would you ever say that? But it's always been part of my life, and it really picked up, um, in my early 20s again. And I just haven't looked back. So always trying to improve. I've had my ups and my downs, but it's a sport that I love to play.
Yeah, so tell me about the long drive tour. How did that happen?
That was, I think people know me the most out there because, of the long drive. I think I'm losing distance, which is really sad. I need to play more and get that distance back. But it was, it was in Colorado. It was my first Funeral Directors Association convention in Colorado, so CFDA. And I remember it was Castle Pines North was the golf course. I'm pretty sure. And it was the golf event, scramble tournament, how they do it. I signed up. Nobody knew who I was. And in the long drive hole, I I smoked it. Now, keep in mind, this was Colorado, so elevation, had some play. I don't know how far it went, but I killed it. And afterwards, I drove down. Obviously, I was far. I picked up the flag, stuck it in, and at the award ceremony, walking in at the end, I hear all these mumblings back and forth. You know, who's this Cameron Black? Who? And I hear it, and I'm like, I don't know how to take this. And anyway, when they did the awards, they're like, oh, all right, we're going to do the long drive award. And they're like, who, Cameron Black, or, who is this? And I stood up kind of like bashfully, like walking up, and they stopped me, up there, and he grabbed my shoulder and was like, we just want you to know, when we went out to pick up this flag, we had to go measure it because we're like, what is this? And so they announced it. They said, just so everybody knows, this ball was hit 415 yards. And I was just like, geez, like I knew I was always like a big hitter, but I guess everything just aligned, on that hit. And so we finished all that. And the club pro pulled me aside and he goes, have you ever considered doing long drive? And I never heard of it. I'd never heard of long drive. I go, I don't even know where to begin. And he goes, well, I do, because I've kind of played in it here and there. So he wrote down a number, and he said, call this number. And I said, okay. And so I called, and that number was the Adams Golf company line. It was, the rep for Adams Golf. And I was like, hey, I was told to call, and he knew why. He might have got a tip that I was calling. And I said, I guess I want to learn about this long drive. Curtis, they said, okay, we'll give you a shot. They send me one club, because, people always think in long drive that these clubs are illegal. I do want to put out there that every club that people use in long drive competitions are all PGA legal. You can play with them on tour. They just don't, because it's a harder club to hit. I mean, you're hitting 3 degree, 4 degree, 5 degree, extended as long as you can, which is about 48 inches, depending if you go from the shaft or from the top of the, the head. So they send me one club in the mail, and I'm like, okay, what do I do with this? They said, well, there's a qualifier. So in long drive, you have to qualify state, and then you have to qualify regions. And if you qualify there, you go to worlds. And so I go to my first state qualifier, not knowing, I had no idea what to expect. People are showing up, and I'm sure you've seen it on TV, with these huge tour bags with like 15 drivers, in there. I don't have a bag. I'm walking in with one club. I'm looking around like, what am I getting myself into? And this was in Cortez, Colorado. And I'm like, why? Because then I learned if you break your club, you can't borrow other people's clubs. Like if you break it, you're done. And so that's why people have multiple, because it's not uncommon to break a club in your set. Luckily, I didn't break it, but I qualified state, went to regional, and I didn't qualify. I didn't know what I was doing. That was in Phoenix. But then the next year, I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it again. And so I actually, this was at, I looked it up. I was at another convention, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's qualifiers today. So I cruised over. This time I had like a couple more clubs in my bag. So I felt, they actually sent me the bag with my name. So I actually felt part of something. And I swept it. I killed it. I won all my, um, uh, that whole day I won it all. Then I went to regionals in Montana that time. I qualified for worlds, and I went to worlds in Mesquite, and did that. And then I just kind of did that as a hobby. People would hire me to fly out and do charity events here and there, and it was fun. It was super fun, but it gave me an opportunity to really just kind of do what I love, which is just hitting the golf ball. But if people ask me, "Where's your passion?" It's I love hitting it far and I love swinging far, but golf is always. I mean, I'd rather just go play on a golf course. And but I did that for about 5 years. Then I just got too busy. I don't know if I'm getting too old, but the good news is the seniors start at 45 in long drive. If they haven't changed it, so maybe I'm like maybe I'll go back and compete on the senior tour when I hit 45. So anyway, but that was a super fun experience. It was something that was way out of my comfort zone, especially seeing the people. I mean, I was hitting against all the big players, the Jamie Sadlowskis, Tim Bergs, all the big names. Back when I competed, but it was super fun and very nerve wracking. I mean, one of the rules is you have to tee up your own ball. And that might sound funny, but you will see people literally on their knees, holding their wrists, and their hands are literally trying because you think about it on a tee box, people are watching, but you have a crowd, a stadium crowd behind you, all fixated on what are you going to do? You're going to shank it, top it, do this. And so it's, it's a different experience, but it was fun. And I'm so glad that I did it, and I still love watching it. And maybe one day I'll get back on it. I don't know, but like I said, I think I've gotten slower, so I got to do some speed training to get back up to it. So,
What's the format of the event? Like, do you get like a certain number of swings? I've never even watched a long drive competition.
now this is the format when I competed. I'm sure there's been some modifications, but typically it's a double elimination, and you're typically hitting against 2 to 3 other people, depending, and that's called a set. So you have to either be depending, you have to be it doesn't matter, and you get 6 balls, and you have to hit 6 balls. I want to say in like 2 minutes and 30 seconds, and it doesn't matter what happens to those 6 balls. Just one of them has to be in play, and it's the furthest one in play. So out of those 6 balls and the people you're playing with, if you win that set, you advance on to either the winning bracket. If you win, if you don't, you go to the losing bracket, and if you lose that again, you're out. But that's kind of how you keep progressing. So
No, that'd
it's
be intense, man.
I mean, it is. I mean, you're walking out of a tunnel, you're being announced, all, I mean, I love it because I feed off of that as well. Even in like what I do today, I love the adrenaline. I love the challenge, but um, yeah, it's fun. It's super fun. And today the equipments and what people are doing now, it's entirely different. So I'd probably have to learn a whole different swing. But if you look now, they're switching because before, you were hitting like a 4x stiff shaft and just swinging as fast as you can. But now they're using these shafts that are a little bit more flimsy. And now it's about timing and creating lag and letting the equipment, do the mechanics more than your body. And it all still plays in there, but the science behind it is you would you have no I had no idea how much science is behind hitting a golf ball, from attack angle to smash factor to launch angle, you name it. There's a lot. It was fun to learn all that.
Yeah, that's crazy, man. I still remember the first time I mean, we'd known each other for a few years, but I'd never played golf with you. And we're like, I think we were in St. George. I think it was a
I think it was the
USDA golf.
ledges, wasn't it?
Yeah, the ledges, and there's this hole to par four. It's not very long. It's like maybe
That was
like
on the back
315 or
nine.
320 or something. Yeah, and everybody's laying up because there's all this trouble in front of the green. And we pull up to your guys' group. You guys have been ahead of us for most of the day. You guys are waiting for the group on the green, and I'm like, what are these guys doing? Like, what are they waiting for? Like, just get up there, just punch it down there, and And then I see you step up to the tee box after all this waiting with an iron.
I
And
was
I'm
gonna say,
like,
do you remember what club I was hitting? Yeah, it was an iron.
yeah, it was like a 3 iron or 4 iron or
It was
something.
a
And I'm like, what?
4 iron.
And then I'm like, all this waiting, and he's just going to lay it up, and then you smack it up there. And I was like, dude, what the heck was that? And anyway, so that was like my first memory of you golfing. And but
Yeah,
yeah, like to your point you made earlier, like it's been good for you. Like I would say it has, because just like there's like a prestige about you in the space, right? Where folks know that like Cam's a golfer, or
and
Cam's
it's good and
a
bad, I'll tell
golfer.
you, because if I don't do well, I feel like I've let everybody down, and that's been a lot lately. Where it's like, man, I've like this year, I'm like, I got to commit myself to getting my game back on, because there's like this expectation that I kind of created, and and it was doing well, but it's just like, wow, it's a heavy load to carry at times, but people they get it, but golf is golf, and that's what I keep telling myself. I mean, that's why I say it's amazing. Even on the PGA Tour, people will win an event, but they'll miss the cut the next time. So it's just, but it's a great sport. So thanks for asking me about it, because a lot of people, they know about it, but that was kind of the story into it. I mean, I can thank the funeral profession for allowing me to do that, because it only happened at one of those events where it was noticed. So it's
Yeah,
pretty
that's
cool.
so crazy. So let's back up then now to funerals. And what was your first entrance into the funeral space? Like what was the first job? What drew you in? How did you get there?
Yeah, I came in green. So at this stage in my life, I had a couple things going for me. So I don't know how far back you want to go, but like when I started school, I always thought I was going to be in the medical field. That's where I started. I became a paramedic. I was going to go that route, become a PA, and then from there figure out what I was going to do. But sales kind of always pulled me back. But with that, I always had I still have a very big fascination with medical, um, even on the chiropractic side as well. But I say that because when I was when I left school, I started doing work on the wholesale side. I was in the textile business. I worked for a company called Karistan, which is a division of Mohawk. But then from there, when this is back in '08, when the economy was just kind of like not knowing, it was just not knowing what was going on, especially out in Georgia where I was living. A lot of volatility, and so one of my friends had this opportunity which allowed me to go help people financially plan. Um, and that was very intriguing to me. I think number one, I think the money was intriguing because he would talk to me about what he made, and here I am, a young 20-year-old, like gawking, like, oh yeah, that'd be if I could just do this, I made it. And so one of the requirements was that I had to get an insurance license. And so I went and got my insurance license. And because what we sold were, insurance backed products for investment purposes, is kind of the reverse, where you bought the minimum life insurance, but you maximized the return. So you take the tax advantage. So we were selling a lot of our bread and butter was index universal lives, IULs. And so I did that, was successful. But then really '09 hit, and that's when it really dipped, on the economy side, and it kind of just stopped. And I just thought to myself, oh my gosh, what do I do now? Um, and honestly, my story now picks up to where, uh, I knew it was a family friend. Really, it was my wife and this guy's mother, and they were talking one time at church, and I had to teach a lesson, and I guess I teach with passion, just like when sales, I get very passionate about what I do. And she pulled my wife aside and she goes, Cameron really needs to call my son, because I think he would do great um, in the business that they just got up and going. And Jen's like, oh, okay. Well, what is it? And she goes, I don't know exactly what it is that he does, but I know it's working with funeral homes. And she was just like, ugh. She's like, I'm not going to tell him to do that. That sounds awful. And so I never got back. And then maybe 7 months, 8 months later, it was like reintroduced. Like, this is, what they're doing is pretty impressive. He really should reach out. And this is when I was like, oh my gosh, she's my wife's pregnant. We had to figure out what we're going to do. Here I am trying to balance. And, you know, it got to the point where I mean, this is a little vulnerability, but maybe not. Like, the whole thing was once we had kids, like, my wife was going to be home with the kids. And here I was just like struggling. And, and I laugh because it's like do all you can do, and then things will happen. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go to Chick-fil-A, but not just to be, I'm not gonna work at just Chick-fil-A. I'm gonna become an owner operator. And so I went in there, like I'm gonna do this. And anyway, they hired me on the spot, and they're like, you're going to make $10 an hour and you're going to do this. I mean, I had to order all this. I'm just like, it's a little deflating, but I was like, it's okay. This is not it. But in the meantime, I say all that where I reached out to this company back in the day. It was called Lincoln Heritage Funeral Planning, which is, Precoa today. And, I expressed the interest to learn more. I flew out to Portland, and, and my whole perception changed what this funeral service, was all about. I had probably what everybody has when they mention funeral home, just like, oh, I don't want to talk about it. That's too sad. But when I flew out and I learned the different side, the pre-need side, something clicked. And living in Georgia at the time, there wasn't really anything there. So that's why I was like, what do I do in the interim? That was the whole Chick-fil-A thing. Like, if this doesn't work out, I got this route. Um, but funeral home came open in Georgia, and I got the phone call because they wanted to hire me. I just wasn't in the area to move yet. So I was kind of like in limbo. And they said, hey, we want to bring you on because we have a funeral home for you. I looked it up. From my house to this funeral home, it was 92 miles. So every day I drove 92 miles to the funeral home and ran appointments and met with families, and just fell in love with it. I really did. And one of the things when I joined it, I'm the person that says I want to know everything. And so, instead of going back and forth, it's a long distance. I sat there. I went out to the community. I helped out on the at needs. I sit in on the at needs. Where it was applicable, I observed, even embalmings. I went on removals because this was like a small, rural town in Georgia. Just because I wanted I wanted to see and feel and experience all of it, and I'm happy that I did. And I sold and did this for about 9 months, and then I get a phone call, and they say, hey, how do you feel about moving to Colorado? Obviously, what you're doing there is great, but we really need somebody in Colorado to help grow that territory. And talked with my wife, and I said, hey, that gets us kind of heading back west for myself, and she was very supportive, and we packed up and um, moved to Colorado. And then from Colorado, I helped grow that territory. Then I started managing funeral homes all in the Colorado area. Then I expanded into Wyoming, then into New Mexico, Minnesota, and then that's when I had that when Precoa came to me and said, hey, we feel like you have a knack with the BD side of it. How do you feel about helping our BD team? Because at the time there was only two of them, and they were doing a fantastic job. But they're like, we're really looking to grow. How do you feel about coming over and helping? And that's where I went from that to BD, and then I did that for the last what 5 years at Precoa. before I joined NGL, like 7 years ago. So, and
Wow.
it's been a fun ride, and and I'm glad that I had that education. I started selling in the home, whether at the funeral home or going into families' homes. I saw I heard the no's, I heard the yeses, I saw what it took to drive success. I'm grateful because when I managed, I could talk with agents and tell them I've been there. That was one of the things that company was big on, is they wanted to have that experience. And because of that, I feel like that education, just I've been blessed where everything that I've had career wise seems to has positioned me for my next opportunity. And that really, having that background and going that route on the marketing side and sales side has tremendously helped me on the insurance carrier side, because I can kind of help bridge a lot of the gaps from insurance world to sales world. I couldn't be more happy where I'm at. I value my relationships tremendously, and and everything is still there, probably even more so than it was when I was there. And I've continued to expand those relationships. We work with some of the best organizations and people across the profession, and we need everybody. We can't do it all. It's a big business. It's an undervalued business, with what's out there. um, but I'm just excited to have a little piece of it and to help where I can.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. This is great. I mean, we've known each other for 10 plus years, and I've never heard the story, so that's awesome. Um, what? How's your role changed now at NGL? Because you got a recent promotion. You've had like another. There's a not too long ago. You had a promotion too, right? What when you entered the position at NGL? What were you doing, and how has that changed in the
Sure.
role today and all that?
So I think NGL, I mean, a little bit about NGL if I can. I mean, they entered the
Yeah.
pre-need space in 1997. So, I mean, when you think about pre-need in general, some say late 70s, some say mid 80s, but so we were one of the, later carriers to enter into, pre-need. We celebrated 25 years in pre-need a couple of years ago. And so NGL over the years has been evolving. Even when I joined back in 2019, it is not the same NGL today as it was back then, and it's a good thing. So when I was hired on as a regional vice president. Which, again, I worked with our marketing organizations just to help them become successful. And I remember, I came in excited, and I didn't really know what to expect. And I'm like, okay. I remember talking to my boss saying, "Hey, when do I go out and travel with my partners and help them grow their business?" And they're like, we don't do that. I was like, "What do you mean you don't do that?" And it's not that they shouldn't or they couldn't. It's just they weren't they weren't ready, or that just wasn't their position at that time. And over the last 7 years, NGL has really evolved into a company that has a huge emphasis on pre-need. It's our biggest driver. It's our biggest product. We have a lot of passion behind it. Internally, that that's our goal, is we want to be the leader in pre-need. People always think the leader means the most volume. I think that comes with it, but the leader is just trying to be the best product manufacturer, the best customer service, the best support, whatever it might be, and that's really where our focus is. And I think when NGL started, the model that they created has really been, a pillar for our success, where we really want to be the experts and put all of our emphasis behind being a carrier. And that's worked for us. And so then, if we rely on us being the carrier experts, and we rely on our marketing partners that work with us to be the experts in marketing, we feel that's a great dynamic. And then work with the funeral homes that want to grow. That I call it like the trifecta. That's where the success comes in. And so, yeah, so I started as a regional vice president, and then I moved into the VP role. And then as we continue to position NGL more, focused on pre-need, I was promoted a couple years ago to senior vice president of, pre-need sales and business development. And then again, because we're continuing to define um, who we are, uh, with my experience and where I came from, Joe felt it was time, and the executive team, our management committee, felt it was time um, where I become the chief pre-need distribution officer, where that I am sitting there, with the leadership and working with all of the teams, and really continue to be that mouthpiece with my amazing team. Our team is small. I say small, but yet mighty, because that's just our model, and we have a great mixture of talent. We have a lot of internal talent. I have people on my sales team that started on the agent support line. They've been with NGL 18 plus years, and now they're on the sales team. But they have all that back knowledge, which has just been very helpful. And I have, individuals on the sales team that worked at different organizations within the profession, so they bring that different type of perspective. And so I really feel that we just have a great team, and culture is a big part of what it is that we do. And um, we just couldn't be more excited what the future holds.
That's awesome. You got a killer team, man. I love it. I love your team. Um, and there was a few I hadn't met till last year, but just such great people, and all just like deep relationships in the space, which I think is
They
important.
care, and they care about each other, and that's and it shows. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, you guys have a way, just you can kind of plant yourself at a show, and people are just going to come and gather around and hang out with you guys. So that's pretty awesome.
it's fun.
So another question, and I don't think this was definitely not something that was like sent to you prior to or anything, but you know, we both lost a parent last year. I lost my mom. You lost your dad. I just have a question. I mean, what sort of what was like one of the more impactful things surrounding his like funeral and life celebration that you maybe didn't expect? Does anything come to mind?
Well, um, well, thanks for asking this question, because I will say losing my father was, and I'm sure with your mother, and I remember when your mom died, which I was heartbroken. And when I lost my dad, it was unexpected. Everybody has their own story, and when you hang up the phone with a parent or whoever, that could be your last phone call. And I was fortunate enough. Um, we host a Halloween party every year. We're known as like the Halloween house in this area. So if you ever drive up, our road, you'll you'll spot our house. We've thrown this party, and I remember taking pictures of of my kids dressed up, and I sent it out to my family text. And my dad was in the hospital because he had some surgery, and he was recovering. I mean, it went flawless. It was great. He had his discharge papers. He was going home, and he was on his way to recovery. One of the surgery he had was, on his back, and one of his biggest challenge. He was just in pain, and what he hated is he couldn't play golf. And he's like, if you have this, I promise you'll be playing golf this spring. And so that was a big motivator for him. But he FaceTimed me. And I'll tell you, Curtis, I count my blessings, because we were in the middle of the party, and I look at my phone and I see it's my dad FaceTiming me, but I answer it, and here I am fully dressed as I was Frankenstein, painted face green, you know, I just answer it, and he just starts laughing. He goes, I knew you. I just wanted to see what you were going to be. He says, I saw the picture of Maverick. That's our boy. And he's like, I just wanted to call and, and say hello. And I said, oh, thanks, Dad. It looks like you're doing well. I'm excited for you to get home. And we ended it, like, I love you, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. And that night was it was a long night. You imagine we host a lot of people, and so that night I was like, you know what? The next day, Saturday, I said, I need to sleep in. I am exhausted. So what do? I put my phone on like do not disturb. Like nobody can get hold of me. And yeah, so come Saturday morning, October 4th, um, I see all these missed calls when I look, and actually, when I found out I wasn't even using my phone, my mom called called my wife's phone and said I need to talk with Cameron, and I said hello, and she was just in tears and said your dad died, and I was just I spoke about this a lot when I was talking with people about pre-need, and one of the things I always tried to reassure them in the process is as much as you prepare, you can never prepare everything, and that's okay, because a lot of the hang up was I can't do this because I don't know everything. I'm like, it's okay, you're supposed to know everything, let's just get everything down. And that moment hit me hard, as I've been in this business for a long time. I've seen it. I've had a lot of friends like yourself experience this, but until you're in it, it really hits you like you're right. We talk about it, we try to prepare about it, but you can never prepare, especially when it's someone like a parent. And so that was a shocker. And he was um, he was 72 years old. He was young. A lot of the stuff I have back here behind me are, things that I took that are memories of him. And, I have a Thumbie on my, on my ring with his fingerprint. Um, and so I'm grateful that I kind of understand, um, connection and, memories, and really focusing on, all those things, because, I always thought it's the memories that keep them around. And I'm just grateful that I, I can't tell you the outpour, um, from all my friends throughout the profession and even beyond, that just the support. And I'm sure you felt it as well, because we get it, and what it did for me. And I spoke about this at one of the conventions shortly after. I said, I've always enjoyed what I did, but now that I've experienced this, I said, I have a reconfirmed passion. What we do is good. And it's so important that we help, educate, um, our friends and family, and, those that are, interested in this topic. We educate them about what this really does, because we don't know. And it's not a popular topic. I think it's becoming more popular. All the education that the majority of all the consumers have is either bad situations, because it's either featured on the news or something dramatic happened. That's what people like to talk about. And so it just reconfirmed that, what it is that we do, and not just what we do, but what everybody has a hand, in this profession, and they help out in so many ways, from the tribute videos. I remember texting you when I was at the funeral home. I was like, hey, do you work with this? We got to do live streaming and do this. And so, um, it was very helpful to have, friends like yourself that I could lean on, and vice versa. And, but, but I hope that answers it. But the biggest thing is, it's hard to accept, but more importantly, it's a reality that some of us experience sooner than we need to. But the biggest part is you're not alone, and we have a huge network of friends that are there to support and build you up. And but really, it's cherishing those memories, because it is the memories that keep that individual around. So, that was again, with all that being said, just end with, it was a reconfirmed commitment that what we do is very, very important.
No, well said, man. That wraps this up, I think, super well, because it's just, and I agree with you. I mean, this the outpouring that you received, I'm sure just wasn't something you were
I was
expecting.
mindful.
Obviously, weren't expecting any of this, but yeah, same. For me, that was the most impactful thing, was just the how many folks reached out.
And I mean, we had his service in small town Wyoming, and the amount of things that were delivered was just like what do we do with all this? And it seems like, oh, it's just, but it's more than just what was sent. It was the thought, behind it, and that's why we do what we do. But um, It's very meaningful, and it was very impactful, and it's something that I'll never forget.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that, Cam. And yeah, sorry about your loss again. I know he was like your best friend, but
We had a lot of memories together.
okay.
So,
well, we better go golf in his honor.
I told myself on his birthday, I'm going to go play some golf. So
awesome. Okay. Well, I know you're a busy man, and I appreciate you giving me this much time. And again, as long as we've been friends, it's cool for me just to hear the story here. And I know others in the space are going to love to hear this as well. So thanks for joining the PodCasket, where we tell the stories of the legends in death care. That's what you are now.
Well,
And,
I appreciate that, but I don't know about legend, but I do love what I do, and I'll continue to do my best. So,
okay. Thanks, Cam. And everybody listening, be sure to subscribe to be notified of upcoming stories we're telling. Appreciate it. Thanks.